Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the live stream of today's Blue Origin test flight. My name is Ariane Cornell with Blue Origin. We're broadcasting live from our West Texas launch site, where launch preparations are well underway. I'm joined by my colleague and co-host this morning, Phil Hahn, who's an engineer on the flight sciences team here at Blue. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm doing well, Ariane. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here with you today for what's sure to be an exhilarating test flight.
Absolutely. It's a pretty cool way of kicking off World Space Week, don't you think?
Yeah.
Phil, before we get to today's mission profile, let me just update everyone on where things stand currently. The day started early this morning when the new Shepard rocket rolled out of our Vehicle Processing Facility, or the VPF as we call it, and traveled 2 miles north to the launch pad. Once there, the rocket was rotated into position and powered up. Since that time, the ground crew has been prepping the rocket for launch. And at this point, the crew capsule has passed all its subsystem checks and the booster is loaded with propellant and properly conditioned. Right now, it looks like we're approaching T-minus 13 minutes and 20 seconds, and Mission Control is going through their final preparations.
Right, so everything seems nominal for an exhilarating test flight. Today will be the 5th flight of this new Shepard booster and the 6th flight of this crew capsule. But actually, it's the 7th time this capsule has flown because it was the same capsule we used for our successful pad escape test in October of 2012. So every flight we take here at Blue Origin is a chance to expand our envelope. And so today we're going to continue to expand that envelope by doing an in-flight escape test.
Right, Phil. The new Shepard crew capsule has a full envelope escape system. So what does that mean for our viewers on the web? It means that from the moment that the astronauts are in the crew capsule, buckled in, through flight and through what's the normal separation of the booster from the crew capsule, which is about 250,000 feet or about 75 kilometers up, we have escape as an option to get the crew capsule far and fast away from the booster if we ever have an issue.
Right, so drawing on the lessons of the Mercury and the Apollo programs, the new Shepard program has a full envelope escape system that protects the astronauts throughout their climb to space. In the event of any booster anomaly, the crew capsule will fire the solid rocket motor located in its base and get out of the path of the booster. So this is the same system we successfully tested on a launch pad in 2012, but it has yet to be tested in flight. That's what we're here to do today. In fact, this is the first in-flight escape test since the Little Joe tests as you can see on your screen, in 1966. Now, Little Joe was a purpose-built booster that was built specifically to test in-flight escapes, but in our case, we're going to use the same booster that's gone to space and back 4 times. We actually have footage of what this escape attempt might look like today. Why don't we roll that now?
Let's check out the animation.
The lessons of Mercury and Apollo. Blue Origin's new Shepard vehicle features a full envelope escape system designed to protect astronauts throughout their climb to space. Shortly after the escape hatch is closed on the launch pad, the escape system is armed and available if needed. If an anomaly is detected, a signal from the capsule, booster, or the mission control team initiates the escape sequence. During this sequence, a solid rocket motor fires for 2 seconds, quickly separating the crew capsule away from the booster. Once away, the capsule enters a standard descent profile, deploying drogue and main parachutes before coasting down to a landing. Like the airbag in your car, this full envelope capsule escape system is always there if needed.
So, Phil, what might have been a little bit less clear from that animation is that today we're likely going to lose the new Shepard booster. When we designed the new Shepard system, we decided to add the full envelope escape system to ensure that the astronauts always had an option to escape so that they could survive any anomalies. So while today's failure is, let's say, artificial, and we're going to try to attempt to recover the booster, today's mission is totally focused on a successful crew capsule escape with the understanding that the booster will likely be lost. And in fact, we should be clear to everybody out there, Phil, that the only test objective today is recovering the crew capsule. But, you know, you of all people should understand this and recognize this, that we're going to be sad to lose that booster, right? It was the first booster, after all, that made the historic landing from space, and that's powered the first reusable rocket system ever with 4 reflights. But you also know, as an engineer, Phil, that we have to continue to push the limits and find the corners on the envelope of our system here with New Shepard.
That's right, and pushing those limits includes, of course, testing an in-flight escape.
So, Phil, let's talk about how this escape test is going to work. We're planning on triggering the solid rocket motor, or the SRM, that we've embedded in the crew capsule as New Shepard is experiencing the most stressful flight condition, which is called maximum dynamic pressure. And this is while New Shepard is punching through that sound barrier at the same time. So you know this, as we call it in space speak, that's called max Q. So max Q is going to happen at about 45 seconds after ignition at an altitude of 16,000 feet. So no stepping out for a cup of coffee as soon as we launch this rocket, Phil, but I don't think you're going to need it. It's going to go down fast.
I won't need it, and that solid escape motor packs a punch. It'll slam the booster with 70,000 pounds of force for 1.8 seconds. The crew capsule will then vector its thrust from the solid rocket motor to steer itself clear of the path of the booster.
Actually, Phil, we have footage from the pad escape test from October of 2012 that you're referencing. So we can see just how intense that the escape motor's firing is actually going to be. So why don't we check that out?
4, 3, 2, 1, escape.
So there you see the firing of the solid rocket motor, but then it comes down normally under the drogue chutes first, and then you see the main chutes come out, and after that it should be a regular soft descent back to Earth.
Right, so one of our design goals here at Blue Origin is to lower the cost of space travel by designing and building rockets that can be used again and again. The solid rocket motor in the capsule is just another example of this focus. This particular solid rocket motor has flown on 4 previous flights, and it stays in the capsule between flights. The motor itself is expendable, so once it's used, we'll swap it out with a new one.
Exactly. So, Phil, as the animation noted earlier, the escape system is like the airbag in your car. It provides some peace of mind, but you're only going to use it if there's an emergency. So as a reminder to our viewers, we're coming to you live from West Texas with about 7 minutes to go before launch. You're looking at live shots of our New Shepard rocket there on the pad. We've got the crew capsule sitting on top of our New Shepard booster there. There's a little bit of frost on it, but we're all set to go for this morning. Phil, why don't we talk a little bit about that booster, because it's also in for quite a ride today. The New Shepard booster was designed to fly in 2 directions, but on a normal ascent, it always has the aerodynamic benefit of having the conically shaped crew capsule on top. But as soon as we fire that solid rocket motor in the escape system, the aerodynamic shape of the booster is going to change dramatically from being led by the crew capsule to being led by that ring fin. And all of this is happening during that intense period of max Q, or max dynamic pressure.
Right, so as the crew capsule steers its way away from the booster, that same 70,000 pounds of force that pushes the capsule away will also be pushing back on the booster. So not only will it be flying with that ring fin and the blast dome leading, but it's going to be knocked sideways by that plume. So the BE-3 engine will be gimbling like crazy to try and regain control and keep it on a vertical ascent profile.
Phil, if the blast from the capsule is too much for the booster to recover from, the booster is going to automatically cut thrust to the BE-3 engine, or the Blue Engine 3. It's yet another safety feature that we've built into New Shepard, and it's appropriately called the Thrust Termination System, or the TTS. This system shuts off thrust to the engine should the booster tilt a little bit too much and start to send the booster on an unsafe trajectory. If that happens on today's mission, which, as noted, is the most likely scenario here, the booster is going to fall back to the ground.
Right, the booster was not designed to survive an escape, because conceivably the only reason you'd escape from a firing booster is if you thought it was some threat to you. If the booster does manage to survive the escape, and if thrust termination does not activate, the booster will continue to space and attempt a re-entry just like we've seen on the previous 4 missions. We should note, though, that, again, the only goal of this flight today is the return of the crew capsule after a successful escape.
Right. Well, this booster has successfully flown to space and back 4 times. Again, a truly reusable system in New Shepard that this booster has proven. Clearly today, we're not certain that it's going to survive. If it does, we'll be thrilled. I know you, in particular, are going to be ecstatic. You've been working on this rocket for many years. But the only focus of today's mission is the full envelope escape system on the crew capsule and making sure that that fires well. So I'm hoping by now, Phil, that our viewers appreciate why we're so excited about today's test.
Yeah, no joke. But Ariane, regardless of the outcome of the booster, really all eyes should be on the crew capsule. So after that escape motor burns out, the capsule will coast while its reaction control system stabilizes the vehicle. It'll only take a few seconds to get to apogee, and then the vehicle will deploy its drogue chutes and ride under drogues for a little bit before deploying the main chutes. And then just before touchdown, a ring of retro thrusters will fire to gently slow the capsule to its final destination.
Right. It's a gentle but dusty touchdown. I know we've heard from our viewers that touchdown looks a little sportier than it actually is. But what our viewers are seeing is the dust down here in the West Texas desert being kicked up by those retro thrusters. And the dust down here, it's like talcum powder. It goes everywhere. So it looks a little bit more adventurous, right? But really the capsule's coming down at just over 3 miles an hour by the time it hits Earth.
Right, so let's take a moment and update everyone where we're at. We're currently at about T-minus 3 minutes to launch. It appears that New Shepard is go for launch. The crew capsule's solid rocket motor that we've been discussing is enabled and ready for use.
Looks like right now the booster's internal power has also been switched on. And Phil, we're approaching the final 2 minutes before launch, which is when the auto sequence is going to start. Can you talk our viewers through what's going to happen during these 2 minutes? There's a lot of action.
Sure, so the final 2 minutes of the countdown is highly choreographed to get all of the various subsystems on the rocket prepared and ready for launch at the exact same time. It involves things like pressurizing the tanks, aft fin and engine gimbal checkouts, arming the thrust termination system that we discussed earlier, and then finally handing control over to the booster for launch.
Phil, we're at about T-minus 2 minutes, and I don't know about you, but I've got butterflies, the adrenaline is flowing. I'm ready for a beautiful launch today.
Absolutely, this never gets old. It feels just like the first time.
So it looks like we're going into a short hold here. It's our teams coming together, making sure they're all ready for final launch. So Phil, looks like we're out of the hold here. We're getting close to the launch. Why don't we switch it over to the pad audio so we can listen in as New Shepard comes alive.
All right, so you'll hear some noises and you'll see some things here. The aft fins will twitch left and right, and you'll see the engine gimbal come forward and back and swing left and right. These are called our built-in tests. The propulsion module is actually in full control right now. It's testing the health state of all of its actuators. The noises you hear are the hydraulic pumps spinning up, warming up, keeping things warm and ready to go. So let's just watch and listen.
So Phil, you see again a little bit of frost on the outside of the tank. And that's over that big, beautiful black feather. There are some specks there, but that's from our thermal protection foam, which we've touched up in between flights. But again, that's what a reused rocket looks like.
Exactly. If you look on the panel there on the left-hand side, you'll see 4 turtles. Each successful mission, another turtle goes on the booster. Maybe we'll get a chance to put another one on today.
Oh, I'd love to. All right, looks like we're in a short hold here. So Phil, normally speaking, where would you be during one of these launches?
Right, so normally I work up in our Kent facility, and I work in the flight sciences team, great group of people, and I have the privilege most flights of supporting the day of flight Monte Carlo analysis. So what we do is during the countdown, before we roll out the vehicle, before we load propellants, and at T-minus 10 we launch radiosondes, and radiosondes are helium balloons that ascend through the atmosphere, and they radio back to us the atmospheric profile, so we'll get pressures and temperatures and wind speeds. And so we take that data and we put it into our integrated simulation, which simulates not only the ground support, the rocket and the capsule, but the ground support equipment and everything else that goes into a successful flight. And we run a Monte Carlo set. So a Monte Carlo analysis is when you take a number of parameters and you change them. So you make the rocket a little bit heavier, a little bit light. You make the air a little bit more dense, a little bit less dense. And you see what impact it has on your rocket. And so this is a statistical method of telling us, how we expect the vehicle to perform. So what I would do is I would be running this analysis and sending reports to a group of people that make the go, no-go decision to say whether is good or whether is not good. And I'm very fortunate today to have a couple guys filling in for me. Thank you, David and Austin.
Super. Well, Phil, while we're also standing by here while we're in a short hold, while we don't have astronauts on today's flight, let's talk a little bit about what they ultimately would be able to experience. Because that's in fact what we're working towards, right?
Right.
So, Phil, let's pretend you were one of our astronauts and you were flying on a Wednesday. You'd fly into Van Horn, Texas here in West Texas. You'd meet the team. You'd meet your crewmates. We'd give you a brief introduction on the Monday evening. And then you'd go to bed early because you got to be rested for the Tuesday, which would be a full day of intense training. So that means we're gonna get you through how to do ingress, how to get into the capsule, how to buckle in, how to do egress, how to get out of the capsule. We'll go through emergency exercises to make sure that you feel comfortable with anything that might happen. And then we'll also teach you how to do what we call zero-G etiquette. So make sure you're not flailing around too much and you and your passengers get to really enjoy and experience the flight. So then that evening, you'd go to bed early again. You'd wake up. We would get you out to the crew capsule. We'd strap you in. And you'd go in for your fantastic flight. So that would be about 11 minutes for the entire flight. And at the top of that flight, for 4 minutes, you get to experience zero-G. And you'd get to see the beautiful views out of those windows, the curvature of Earth, and then we'd also get to see the juxtaposition of the darkness of space and the colors of Earth beaming back at you. But that's before you buckle back in, start your descent. You're going to peak at about 5 Gs on descent. And then after that, you're going to come in softly under those parachutes and also with the retro thrust rocket that's going to make your landing nice and soft down here in the desert of West Texas.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting ride. I mean, just the entire experience, not even just the ride, but the experience of, learning to be an astronaut, learning all the mechanics behind it, seeing the facilities. I mean, this was my first trip down to West Texas, and it is just an impressive place. You drive up from Van Horn on the highway and just you come around a bunch of hills, and all of a sudden it opens up and you see a huge vehicle building, and you see a little tiny launch pad way off in the horizon. And it is an awesome experience. And yeah, I can't wait. What would you do in space?
What would I do in space? I would first do some somersaults, and then frankly, I would probably spend the rest of it just gazing out at that spectacular view. I think it's, you've heard of something called the overview effect that astronauts experience once they get into space, and it just changes your perspective. I think that's what I would focus on. I mean, it's going to be incredible. I think we're really at a pioneering time in flight, but just space flight in general. It's going to be a fun experience. But Phil, once you come down, that's not the end of it. We're going to make sure that our astronauts that fly on New Shepard are going to get first access to tickets on New Glenn, which is going to be our orbital vehicle, which we hope to have flying by the end of this decade.
That'd be pretty awesome. Yeah, New Glenn is an exciting program that, I'm privileged to spend part of my time working on. One other thing, if you want to go back to the capsule, though, you want to tell us more about those windows?
So Phil, these are the largest windows that will have ever flown in space. So what you're seeing here, these obviously are just painted on for the moment, but the next version of this crew capsule, which we hope to be flying early next year, are going to have the real windows. So those are multi-paned, fracture-tough windows. We've tested them extensively at our facility up in Kent, Washington, which is where our engineering and design and assembly happens. And so we already have a couple of those capsules that are in process and almost completed, and those are the ones that are going to be flying next. So that's going to give you, again, the incredible view from up above at 100 kilometers on the flight. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. As a reminder, we're coming to you live from West Texas. Let's enjoy these live shots of our new Shepard rocket while we wait for our hold a little bit. Thanks again to our viewers from around the world who are joining us. Again, we're in West Texas, looking at live shots of our New Shepard rocket. We're in a brief hold and we're assessing flight readiness. In the meantime, let's continue to enjoy the views of New Shepard there on the pad.
All right, so just to provide one or two additional pieces of information, we were forced to, like I explained at T-2, the booster had control of the launch, and unfortunately we were forced to revoke that, so we had to stop the booster from counting down, which is called a recycle. So we are recycling, and engineering is currently making an assessment on whether we can proceed or whether we will be scrubbing for the day. So please hang tight. Thank you for watching.
Copy. Step 7, 091 is run up to that. We're right there, or right wherever.
All right, thanks again to our viewers who are joining us live from around the world for a test flight of our new Shepard rocket and the in-flight escape system. We have reset the clock here. We're at T-minus 14 minutes. And we'll be back with you in a little bit as our team in Mission Control continues to work towards our launch here live from West Texas. Thanks everybody for your patience and joining us again for our live webcast of our New Shepard test flight this morning. We are a go for launch, we're happy to announce. Phil, as a reminder to our audience joining us today on the web, what's going to happen today during the test?
So we're going to fly the booster up for about 40 seconds, and then as we approach max Q, which is the maximum dynamic pressure, the solid rocket motor is going to fire as if there were an escape event. And so the crew capsule will steer its way out of the path of the booster. It'll use its solid rocket motor with 70,000 pounds of thrust, firing for about 1.8 seconds, and it'll get out of the path of the booster. Now the booster will get slammed with the same amount of force by that rocket plume, and so it's going to experience some disturbances, and it's going to try and right itself, and it's going to try to proceed to space. But again, the only objective of today is a successful escape test for the crew capsule.
Right, and so once that solid rocket motor fires, the crew capsule will get away, then it's going to come down normally under its drogue chutes, and then just about a minute or so later, the mains will come out. It'll come floating nicely towards the Earth, and then at the last second, our retro thrust rockets at the base of the crew capsule are going to fire for a last-minute soft touchdown.
That's right.
Should be an exciting flight.
It'll be an exciting one, definitely.
So why don't we hold here and continue to admire our beautiful New Shepard rocket. We look forward to getting both the booster and the crew capsule home today, but again, the only focus and the purpose of today's test is to test the escape system in the crew capsule.
Absolutely.
So again, we are live from West Texas. We're at about T-minus 3 minutes on the brink of another exciting test launch of our New Shepard rocket, Phil. Again, in the final 2 minutes, we're going to get into auto sequence. Why don't you remind our viewers of what happens during that last 2 minutes?
Right, so the auto sequence is a highly choreographed set of events designed to get all of the various subsystems on the rocket ready for launch at the exact same time. It involves things like pressurizing the tank, aft fin and engine gimbal checkouts, arming the thrust termination system, and then finally handing control of the flight over to the booster.
Great. Well, Phil, let's watch our New Shepard as she goes through her final checks, and hopefully a beautiful launch today.
I'm looking forward to it.
There go those steering fins at the base of the rocket.
Right, so that's the fin built-in check, and then you'll see the gimbal move shortly.
The gimbal in our BE-3 engine, you see there at the base of the rocket.
And we've entered a brief hold. Please hang tight.
There goes the gimbal on the BE3 engine. It's our LOX hydrogen, maxes out 110,000 pounds of thrust, but can throttle back down to 20,000 pounds of thrust. That's what allows for those beautiful, soft landings that New Shepard does. So again, we're in a brief hold just as our teams get aligned here in the final seconds before countdown. And we're out of the hold and resuming at T-minus 1 minute and 23 seconds. So Phil, I don't know about you, but the adrenaline continues to flow.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm super excited to see this thing go.
There's nothing like a rocket and a countdown clock to get your heart going.
Yeah. This is true.
All right, Phil, it's time to hand this show over to Mission Control so we can listen in on the final countdown. Godspeed, New Shepard.
Control to onboard flight manager. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command start. 2, 1. Shepard has cleared the tower.
There you have it, a spectacular launch of New Shepard, live from West Texas.
All right, so hold on. Coming up here around 45 seconds is when we'll see our escape.
There it is, 70,000 pounds of thrust, pushing that crew capsule at 400 miles an hour.
And the BE3 engine remains on, the booster continues to space.
There it is, a clean firing in the solid rocket motor. The drogues are out on the crew capsule. Those mains should follow shortly.
The booster remains nominal. It's at 39,000 feet and climbing.
Wow, and look how stable that crew capsule is coming down.
Yeah, it looks wonderful.
Again,
Nice
it was a
state.
clean fire of the solid rocket motor. We're waiting here for the mains to come out. Again, the purpose of this test is to make sure that that crew capsule escapes, and it looks like things are going well for right now.
Booster is at 85,000 feet and climbing.
But Phil, there goes your beautiful booster up towards space. It looks like it also clean firing of our BE3 engine.
Absolutely.
110,000 pounds of thrust.
Right, we should note 110,000 pounds of thrust off the pad, but actually we have to throttle down shortly after our planned escape. simply because while we lost the aerodynamic benefit of the crew capsule,
And there go the mains.
okay, so those 3 mains are reefed right now to keep them small. The reefing will remove shortly to fully expand, as you can see. All 3 mains.
There you go, full inflation. Phil, as a reminder, we also have that retro thrust system on the bottom of the crew capsule to make sure that the touchdown is even smoother for our astronauts.
That's right.
For just as a reminder, that's also going to kick up quite a
lot
bit
of
of dust out here in Texas. We've heard it looks, again, looks a bit sporty, but really it's actually just creating an even softer landing for our astronauts here. It's going to come down at just about 3 miles an hour by the time it touches down.
That's right. And to update our viewers, the booster is currently at 240,000 feet and climbing and has just experienced main engine cutoff.
Beautiful.
It continues its ascent to space. Like I was mentioning earlier, we actually have to throttle down the engine as soon as the escape happens, because what happens is, while you lost the aerodynamic benefit of the capsule, you also lost 8,000 pounds. And so if we kept going with our full propellant load at full thrust, we'd actually overboost and go even deeper into space. But let's focus back on the crew capsule.
That's right. You see the hills of West Texas in your screen. A nice, smooth 15 miles an hour or so on that crew capsule. If you're an astronaut in there, it'd be a nice, smooth ride. It would have been exciting, certainly, but most importantly, you'd be safe, right?
You'd be finally catching your breath and watching those mountains come up around you.
And touchdown of the new Shepard crew capsule. From what we can tell, that was a nominal in-flight test of our escape system. And again, all astronauts on board would have had a pretty exhilarating ride, but a safe ride.
Absolutely.
Now that is a robust system, Phil.
Absolutely. All right, so the booster has just passed apogee and it's beginning its re-entry. So you can see the speed is picking up quickly. We've got about a minute until we hit our re-entry. Apogee, of course, is the maximum altitude of the rocket. So its vertical velocity went to 0 and now it's re-entering the atmosphere.
So Phil, we've got a couple of subsystems up there in that ring fin. We've got the drag brakes that are gonna come out at about 20,000 feet. They're gonna cut the speed in half. We also have the wedge fins that come out of the ring fin. That's to help with stability, in addition to the ring fin itself, which helps centralize the pressure. It keeps the rocket upright as it's coming into land.
Correct. The ring fin shifts the center of pressure backwards, and we're about 12 seconds out from those wedge fins deploying. And that also creates additional stability, passive stability for the booster during re-entry. And there they go.
Again, I want to thank our viewers for joining us for this live test of our new Shepard rocket. So far, it's been a successful test of the in-flight escape system, and we're just waiting for our booster to come down for, fingers crossed, what we hope to be the 5th landing of this exact same booster.
So we're at 120,000 feet and falling. 100,000 feet. Now the sequence will be really quick here. The drag brakes will deploy, and shortly after that, the BE-3 will restart. And we'll wait for that smooth, gentle descent onto the pad.
And again, it's the ability of that BE-3 engine to thrust down all the way to 20,000 feet to give it the precise, soft landing.
All right, so drag brakes have fully deployed. Let's wait for that BE-3 engine to fire.
And watch that speed falling pretty dramatically.
There she goes. Look at that. Nice and stable. Landing gear deploying. There you go. The booster's landing on tail fire. It's got Touchdown!
There you go, New Shepard. Look at her. What a test. Phil, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be raising a glass to both the booster and the crew capsule this evening.
Yeah, me too.
What an extraordinary test and a tremendous final flight for both craft. As we'd very optimistically aimed for, both our crew capsule successfully executed its in-flight escape test, and the booster brilliantly continued to space and came home for a 5th landing on our landing pad just 2 miles north of where it took off from. Phil, both of these vehicles are going to be retired after this epic flight, but we'll certainly find a place for these vehicles to be seen by everybody. In the meantime, we've got replacement next-gen New Shepard boosters and capsules coming down the line at our facility up in Kent, Washington, near Seattle. And I don't know about you, but I can't wait to get back down here to Texas to fly them again soon. Well, on behalf of the hardworking team at Blue Origin, thank you all for joining us today for this live broadcast of our New Shepard test flight. If you're interested in learning more and keeping up to date on our progress, be sure and sign up for on our website for email updates. This is going to conclude our exciting live web stream from here in West Texas. Phil, a big thank you to you for all of your insights this morning.
Thank you, Ariane. Anytime. This was amazing. I just want to take a minute and just send a special thanks out to our Blue Origin team across the country. Your hard work, your diligence, your effort has paid off wonderfully and made the vehicle and system we have today. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're speechless, and absolutely rightfully so. And thank you again to our amazing team around the country. My name is Ariane Cornell. It's been a pleasure to be your host today, and until our next exciting launch, Gradatum Ferociter.